Thursday, March 13th, 1997. A little after 8 in the evening, a retired police officer in Paulden, Arizona, steps out of his front door and walks to his truck. He is not looking at the sky. He is looking for his keys. Paulden sits about 12 miles north of Chino Valley and roughly 80 miles north of Phoenix, a small ranching community on Highway 89, where the elevation thins the air, and the night, on a clear March evening, is the deepest black a person can stand under. The moon that night is a few days past new. The Hale-Bopp comet, which has been the brightest naked-eye object in the sky for weeks, is climbing the western horizon. People all over the state are outside that night because of Hale-Bopp. The comet will not pass this close again for another 4,200 years. The retired officer is not thinking about the comet. He is thinking about his truck. Then he glances up. To the northwest, low on the horizon, he sees a cluster of orange lights, 5 of them, maybe 6. He cannot tell if they are arranged in a triangle or a chevron. He cannot tell how far away they are. They are not blinking. They are not moving. He goes back inside, gets his binoculars, returns to the driveway, and watches them through the lenses for somewhere between 90 seconds and 2 minutes. They continue south. Then they drop below the southern horizon. He picks up the phone and calls Luke Air Force Base in Glendale. The person who answers does not have an answer. He is the first call. He is not the last. To understand the night, you have to understand the year. 1997 is the year the comet came. Hale-Bopp was discovered in July of 1995 by 2 amateur astronomers working independently, one in New Mexico and one in Arizona. By the spring of 1997, it was the brightest comet to grace the northern hemisphere in 2 human generations. People who never looked up before were looking up now. Telescopes that had been sitting in closets came out. Local astronomy clubs ran public events in city parks. The Phoenix metropolitan area, which had been growing at a rate that scared its own zoning boards, was that night full of people standing in their driveways with their heads tilted back. Arizona in March of 1997 was a state on the cusp of becoming something new, and not yet sure what. The valley around Phoenix had grown by nearly 1 million people in the previous decade. The land between Sun City and Apache Junction, which had been desert and citrus groves 20 years before, was filling in with subdivisions, shopping centers, and the long ribbons of new highway. The Cardinals had just played their second-to-last season at Sun Devil Stadium. The Diamondbacks did not exist yet. The state's governor was a 48-year-old Republican named John Fife Symington III, a former Air Force captain, a Harvard graduate, a real estate developer whose Phoenix area shopping mall projects had collapsed under $300 million in debt, and who was, on the night in question, sitting through the 3rd week of his federal trial on 23 counts of bank and wire fraud. Symington's trial would end 3 months later with a conviction on 7 of those counts. He would resign as governor in September. The conviction would be overturned in 1999. President Bill Clinton would pardon him in 2001. None of that has happened yet. On the night Hale-Bopp is in the western sky, Symington is the governor of Arizona, and he is about to make the most consequential decision of his entire political career. And it is not going to be the decision a person might guess. That decision is coming. The lights have to arrive first. At 7:55 Mountain Standard Time, a man in Henderson, Nevada, 12 miles southeast of the Las Vegas city limit, sees something pass over his backyard. He will later report it to the National UFO Reporting Center, which keeps detailed files of citizen accounts. He describes a V-shaped formation of 6 bright lights, evenly spaced, holding their relative positions exactly, moving in a direct line from the northwest toward the southeast. He estimates the formation is roughly the size of a Boeing 747 seen from below. He hears, faintly, what he calls a sound like rushing wind. The lights pass over him and continue south. He watches them go. Henderson is roughly 275 air miles from Paulden, Arizona, where the retired police officer will not see anything for another 20 minutes. If the same object passed over both witnesses, it traveled those 275 miles in 20 minutes. 825 miles per hour, faster than the speed of sound, without any reported sonic boom, without any radar return. That is the part that nobody can explain. At 8:17, 2 minutes after the Paulden sighting, the calls begin to flood in from Prescott and Prescott Valley. Prescott sits about 50 miles north of Phoenix, at 5,400 feet of elevation. John Kaiser is in his backyard with his wife and his 2 sons. They are looking west. The lights are red. The lead light is white. The lights are flying in a perfect triangular pattern, and as the Kaisers watch them, the family realizes they can see the body of the craft outlined against the stars. The stars they can see through binoculars on either side of the formation. The object passes directly over them. It is silent. It is enormous. John Kaiser will later estimate that it is more than a mile wide. It banks to the right and continues southeast. 5 miles away, the Timlay family standing in their own yard sees the same thing approaching from the same direction. Timlay is a real estate agent. His wife Bobby, his son Hal, and his grandson Damien stand in the driveway and watch the formation grow as it comes toward them. They will later describe it as a slowly approaching arc that resolved over the course of several minutes into a shape like a carpenter's square with 5 lights set into its leading edge. They report that it cannot be more than a few thousand feet above them. The Lays go inside. They call the police. The police have other calls. Between 8:30 and 8:45, the formation reaches Phoenix proper. Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport is one of the 10 busiest airports in the United States. Its air traffic controllers, on a typical Thursday evening, handle 1,000 aircraft per hour in the vertical column above the city. The radar in the tower paints every transponder-equipped aircraft within 100 miles. Primary radar, which detects metal objects regardless of transponder, paints anything large enough within 40 miles. On the night of March 13th, the tower controllers see nothing on their screens that corresponds to what the people of Phoenix are reporting on their phones. The controllers see what they are supposed to see. They see commercial inbound and outbound traffic. They see around 8:30, a Cessna piloted by an actor named Kurt Russell, carrying his son and his wife Goldie Hawn into Phoenix for a stopover. Kurt Russell, who was a licensed pilot, will later say on a BBC podcast that he saw 6 lights in a V formation as he approached the runway, that he radioed the tower to report unidentified traffic, and that the tower told him they had nothing on their scopes. He says it was Goldie who reminded him years later that he was the one who called it in. The Phoenix metropolitan area in 1997 had a population of just under 3 million. By the morning of March 14th, polling will suggest that roughly 1 in 10 of those 3 million people saw something unusual in the sky the night before. That is 300,000 witnesses. In the suburbs north of the city, Dr. Lynn Kite is at her kitchen window when she sees them. She is a physician. She has been seeing strange lights from her home for months, going back to the previous spring, and she has been quietly filming them with a Sony Hi8 camcorder she keeps near her window. She grabs the camera that night and films. The lights appear one at a time, hold their position for a few minutes, and then go out one at a time, in reverse order. This is the second event of the night. The footage Dr. Kite captures is from approximately 10 in the evening. The Air Force will later identify these lights as illumination flares, dropped during a training exercise by A-10 aircraft under a winter training program called Operation Snowbird. The geometry checks out. Frame-by-frame analysis comparing Dr. Kite's footage to daytime images of the same horizon line shows the lights disappearing behind the ridgeline of the Sierra Estrella, which is exactly what flares would do as they sank below the line of sight. The 10 o'clock lights have an answer. The 8:30 lights, the silent moving formation that crossed 300 miles of Arizona airspace in less than an hour, do not. A few miles north of Dr. Kite's house, in Scottsdale, a 21-year-old amateur astronomer named Mitch Stanley is in his backyard with his 10-inch Dobsonian telescope. He has had it out since dusk, looking at Hale-Bopp. At around 8:30, he hears his mother call out that she can see lights in the northern sky. Mitch swings the telescope around. At 43 power magnification through 10 inches of aperture, he sees, with absolute clarity, what the rest of the city below him is seeing as a single, mile-wide craft. He sees 5 individual airplanes flying in tight formation, wingtip to wingtip, each carrying a single bright light on its underside. He sees the airframes. He sees the spaces between them. He calls down to his mother that they are airplanes. He does not call the news. He does not call the Air Force. He thinks the matter is settled. It is not until 2 weeks later, when a reporter from the Phoenix New Times tracks him down through the local astronomy club, that he gives his account. He is consistent. He has been consistent ever since. He saw airplanes. The pilot, the astronomer, and the physician all looked up at the same hour. The pilot saw a formation he could not identify. The astronomer saw aircraft. The physician filmed a separate phenomenon she could not explain. This is what the record actually says. 3 witnesses, 3 different positions in the city, 3 different conclusions. By 8:45, the formation reaches the northern edge of Tucson, which sits 120 miles southeast of Phoenix and is the second largest city in Arizona. A man on Interstate 10, driving home from work, who never gave his name to anyone but the National UFO Reporting Center, reports that an enormous lighted object hovers above his car as he drives south at 65 miles an hour. The object matches his speed. The car is doing 65. It is, he says, the size of a department store. He pulls onto the shoulder. He gets out. The object continues over him for what he estimates is another 40 seconds, then accelerates and is gone over the horizon to the southeast. In Oracle, a small mining town in the foothills of the Santa Catalina Mountains, witnesses report that the formation appears to separate. The lights, which had held tight formation for 200 miles, begin to spread apart. Each light moves on its own trajectory along the edges of the city. 5 lights, 5 directions. Witnesses describe them as reddish-orange, distinct, no longer connected by any visible structure. By 9 o'clock, the lights are over Sonora, Mexico, where reports come in from Nogales and from Hermosillo, 200 miles to the south. The Mexican government does not respond. The Mexican press covers it for a day. Then it stops. The final report of the moving formation comes from a young man at a payphone in Kingston who was driving from Phoenix to Los Angeles and pulled off the highway to call the National UFO Reporting Center because he could not believe what he was seeing in the northern sky. The lights crossed 300 miles of American airspace in approximately 65 minutes. They were observed by witnesses in at least 11 separate locations. They did not appear on the radar of any civilian or military facility that has since published its records. They are gone by 9:15. The second event begins 45 minutes later, 50 miles to the west, with the flares that have an answer. By the time the flares finish burning, the first event is over. The next morning, the calls have not stopped. Luke Air Force Base says nothing. The National UFO Reporting Center in Seattle has received more than 700 reports overnight. Local news affiliates are running witness interviews on the morning broadcasts. By noon on March 14th, the story has moved from the local section to the front page. By the end of the week, USA Today has picked it up. At the state capitol in Phoenix, Governor Symington's office is fielding calls from constituents demanding an investigation. His staff is preoccupied with the federal fraud trial. The chief of staff, Jay Heiler, suggests, according to his own later account, that the best play is to diffuse the story with humor. On June 19th, 1997, 3 months after the lights, Governor Symington holds a press conference at the state capitol. He is in dark glasses. He is at the podium. He announces that, after considerable investigation, the Department of Public Safety has identified the culprit responsible for the Phoenix lights, and they are bringing him forward. A man is led in. He is wearing handcuffs, a gray jumpsuit, and a full latex alien mask with bulging black eyes and an oversized cranium. The press laughs. Symington unmasks him. It is Jay Heiler, his chief of staff. Symington laughs at the press for taking the matter so seriously. The press laughs back. The story gets picked up nationally as comic relief. The next day, the headlines are about the joke and not about the lights. That press conference becomes the official position of the state of Arizona on what happened on the night of March 13th, 1997. Frances Emma Barwood was the vice mayor of Phoenix in March of 1997. A city councilwoman, elected to the District 1 seat in 1993, 54 years old, a former real estate executive. After the lights, she became the only elected official in the state of Arizona to publicly demand an investigation. She held public hearings. She personally interviewed over 700 witnesses. She compiled their accounts and submitted formal requests for information to the Department of Defense, to the Federal Aviation Administration, to the Department of Public Safety, and to the Office of the Governor. She received nothing. Not a denial, not an explanation, not a single record. The Department of Public Safety told her they were not investigating. The FAA told her the matter was not within their scope. Luke Air Force Base told her, in writing, that they had no aircraft in the air over Phoenix on the evening in question, other than the routine sorties associated with Operation Snowbird, which occurred between 9:45 and 10:15 in the evening, not at 8:30. In other words, the Air Force confirmed that the second event, the flares, was theirs. The Air Force did not deny the first event. The Air Force simply did not have anything to say about it. In 1998, Frances Barwood ran for Secretary of State. The Republican Party of Arizona, which had endorsed her in her previous campaigns, did not endorse her this time. Her opponent, a state legislator named Betsy Bayless, won the primary by a wide margin. Barwood was widely characterized in the press as the city councilwoman who wanted to investigate the UFO. Her political career ended on that line. In 2000, a class action lawsuit filed by a group of witnesses asked a federal court to compel the Department of Defense to release any records related to the Phoenix lights. The Department of Defense responded that no responsive records existed. Frances Barwood believes them on this. She believes there are no records because the people who would have kept records did not keep records. She believes the silence is the answer. What she asked for is in the public record. She asked for the flight logs of every military aircraft in the airspace over Arizona on the evening of March 13, 1997. She asked for the radar tapes from Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport, from Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, from Luke Air Force Base, and from the FAA's Regional Air Traffic Control Facility in Albuquerque. She asked for the names of every controller on duty at those facilities that night and for permission to interview them. She asked for any reports filed by military or commercial pilots in that airspace that evening. She asked for any communications records between the governor's office and any federal agency in the 72 hours after the event. She received, in writing, the following responses. The Department of Public Safety said it had no investigative file because no investigation had been opened. The FAA said radar tapes from civilian facilities are typically overwritten on a 15-day cycle, and the tapes from March 13th were no longer in existence by the time her formal request was processed in May. Luke Air Force Base said no aircraft from its facility were operating over Phoenix at the time of the first event, and provided a single page of training schedule data covering only the 10 o'clock flare drop. Davis-Monthan said the Maryland Air National Guard unit was operating under Operation Snowbird and that its records were maintained by the Air National Guard, not by Davis-Monthan. The Air National Guard did not respond to her requests in 1997 and confirmed only in 2000, in response to the federal lawsuit, that its aircraft had been responsible for the 10 o'clock event. No party in possession of records ever produced records related to the 8:30 event. Whether they had them and would not release them, or whether they did not have them in the first place is, as of the date of this episode, unresolved. In 2007, on the 10th anniversary of the event, a documentary filmmaker named James Fox visits Fife Symington at his home in Phoenix. Symington is no longer governor. In the years since his pardon, gone to culinary school and become a pastry chef in Scottsdale. He has a quiet life. He has, according to people who know him, never spoken about the press conference with the alien mask. Fox asks him about the joke. Symington does not answer right away, then he tells him. He says he saw it himself. He was outside that evening, and he looked up, and the object passed over him. He is a former Air Force captain. He has flown F-4 Phantoms, and he is familiar with every aircraft in the United States military inventory and most of the aircraft in every other inventory in the world. He says the object he saw was not any aircraft he had ever seen. He says it was, in his words, otherworldly. He says it was geometric. He says it had embedded lights along its leading edge. He says it was enormous. Fox asks him why he held the alien press conference. Symington tells him he was trying to calm the public. He tells him he was trying to diffuse the panic. He tells him that he was on federal trial at the time and that his lawyers had advised him to avoid any statement that could be used by the prosecution to suggest he was unstable. He tells him he told only his wife. He tells Fox that there are responsible people who saw what he saw and that they should not have been ridiculed. The interview airs in the spring of 2007. The headline writes itself. Former Arizona governor admits he saw UFO. The same governor who held the alien mask press conference now says he saw the craft himself. Frances Barwood says nothing publicly. She is asked about it. She declines to comment. She has spent 10 years being told she was wrong. She has nothing left to say. The Air Force position remains unchanged. In 2000, the Maryland Air National Guard formally claims responsibility for the 10 o'clock flares. They produce flight logs. They produce the aircraft tail numbers. They produce the names of the pilots. They are the second event. The first event, the 8:30 event, the silent moving formation that crossed Arizona in less than an hour, remains, as of the date of this episode, officially unidentified. The Department of Defense maintains it has no responsive records. The Air Force maintains it had no aircraft in that airspace at that time. Mitch Stanley, the astronomer, maintains it was airplanes flying in formation. Fife Symington, the governor, maintains it was not. John Kaiser maintains it blocked out the stars. The Tim Lay family maintains it was less than a mile above their heads. The retired police officer in Paulden never gave his name to the press. He hung up the phone with Luke Air Force Base on the night of March 13, 1997, went to bed, and never spoke publicly again. He has not been identified by any subsequent reporter. The first witness, the one who placed the first call, never said his name out loud. Anonymous. There is a way to tell this story that ends with the flares. The Air Force came in late. The explanation was awkward. The math eventually worked out. The second event resolved cleanly. And the first event is just 300,000 people misremembering a flight of A-10 Warthogs at high altitude that was actually 30 miles further south than anyone realized. Mitch Stanley saw airplanes. The astronomer wins. The governor was wrong. The matter is closed. There is another way to tell this story. The governor of the state, the pilot, the man with the most to lose by saying so, kept the secret of his own sighting for 10 years, and then admitted under oath of his own conscience that he saw a craft he could not identify. The vice mayor of the city compiled 700 witness statements and was met with silence at every level of government she asked. The first call of the night came from a retired police officer who never wanted his name in the papers. The Department of Defense in court said it had no records to release, and a federal judge accepted that as the end of the inquiry. The first way ends in resolution. The second way ends in a question. The question is not whether the lights were aliens. The interesting question is what the record of a free country is supposed to look like when 300,000 of its citizens see the same unexplained thing on the same night, and the apparatus of the state, when asked what it knows, says nothing. The record says that on the evening of March 13, 1997, between approximately 7:55 and approximately 9 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, an unidentified object or formation of objects was visible over the state of Arizona. The record says the governor saw it and laughed at the people who saw it, and admitted 10 years later that he had also seen it and had not been laughing. The record says the city councilwoman who investigated lost her career. The record says the Department of Defense has nothing to release. The record says the astronomer says airplanes. The record says the pilot says no. The record says the lights were silent. The record says they have not returned in the same configuration in 29 years. Hale-Bopp passed back behind the sun in May of 1997. The people who saw the other thing, the lights, are aging out of the record now. The record will close on the witnesses one by one. The state will continue to say what the state has always said about this matter, which is nothing at all. And somewhere, in a file box in a storage facility, or in a server in an evidence room, or in a head that has never written it down, are the answers to the questions that Frances Barwood asked. But that's the thing about records, my friends. The record says what someone at some desk decided to write down. The record does not say what was decided not to write. Somewhere, tonight, there is a person who knows what happened over Phoenix in March of 1997. They are old now. They will die with what they know. And the record will be silent on that too. Because the keeper of a silence is always a person. And every silence has a keeper. That was The Lights Over Phoenix, written and performed by the author, me, James Cawley. Before we leave this familiar trail and brush the dust off our boots and call it a night, I have some big news to share with you all. My first 2 books are now available to buy on Amazon. You can find a direct link to them at enterthedust.com. The first book in the series is called Stories from the Dying World, and the second is called When the Horizon Lies. If you enjoy this podcast and would like to support what I'm doing here, it would mean a lot to me if you check them out. If you'd like me to personalize your copy, write you or a friend a little note and sign it. I'd absolutely love to do that. Visit enterthedust.com and you'll see all the details. And make sure to sign up for the newsletter while you're there. I'll be sending out another secret story, available only to newsletter subscribers, very soon. My name is James Cawley, and you're listening to Dust and Echoes. If you like stories like this, stories that sit at the edge of what the record can account for, that leave you with more questions than answers, then you're in the right place. I'm glad we found you. I release a new story in cinematic audiobook format every single week, right here. Until next time, remember this. History does not simply disappear, it just goes unspoken, unmentioned for too long.